the news, no noise. The lawfare never seems to stop against President Trump, but his legal team did get a request granted from Judge Juan Merchan in New York earlier this afternoon, as he has now moved President Trump's sentencing from September 18th to after the election on November 26th. So now this sets up a presidential election where Trump likely needs to win or face the prospect of going to prison. Can you imagine that? And that doesn't seem very democratic to me. I had the founder of the Article 3 Project, Mike Davis, on with me earlier today. Check this out. With me to discuss the perfect person, he is the founder of the Article 3 Project and a great friend of the show, Mike Davis. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Judge Juan Merchan has bumped back the sentencing roughly 2 months, but the point is that it is after the election. Knowing Juan Merchan's judicial activism, his political maneuverings, why do you think he did this?
I think he's feeling the political heat because he knows that the American people are on to this Biden and Kamala Democrat lawfare and election interference. And I think he understands the American people would not accept a local judge in a local courtroom trying to throw the former president and likely future president of the United States in prison before the presidential election. So, look, I think that Merchan has every intention of putting Trump in prison after the election. And so that's going to be what this election is about. Does President Trump go to Rikers Island, or does President Trump go back to the White House?
Yeah, I mean, when you distill it down, those are basically the binary options here. Do you think that he anticipated that if he had sentenced Trump before the election, sentenced him to time, whether he was remanded to custody at that point or not, as we have seen with every grand jury, with every charge and indictment, every step along the way, it has boosted Donald Trump. Do you think that this gives him some type of cover to say, well, look, I acted, judicially. I delayed this. Do you think that gives him any cover in that regard going into the election?
This judge is corrupt. He is and I don't say that lightly about a judge, but he is corrupt. He is a Democrat Manhattan judge who donated to Biden and Kamala. That is unlawful under New York law. His daughter, Lauren Merchan, is raising millions of dollars off of this unprecedented criminal trial over which her father presided. That requires his recusal under New York statute. And that's not just me saying this. A former federal Clinton judge said that on Caitlin Collins' show on April 5th on CNN. And how did Judge Merchan respond to these calls for his recusal based upon that clear New York statute? He threatened to throw Trump in jail if Trump merely mentioned Lauren Merchan in this blatant conflict of interest. This judge is corrupt. Elise Stefanik just put out a judicial misconduct complaint today with the New York Judicial Conduct Commission that this Lauren Merchan is now working for the Kamala campaign. I mean, it's just a blatant conflict of interest. This judge is trying to get this past the election. I think that the Democrats have probably sent a powerful message that if you sentence Trump before the election, you're going to make him Nelson Mandela and he's going to win by like 5 points. So they're going to wait till after the election. And again, that this election is going to be, does Trump go to Rikers Island or back to the White House?
Oof, that is a scary prospect. And I am pleased with that move by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. But is that the extent that they can do? Because honestly, Mike, if this was Donald Trump and it was one of his children who had been raising money that was working for the campaign, that would never fly.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with the Republicans in Congress is Democrats are ferocious and they have tried to bankrupt Trump. They've tried to throw Trump in prison for the rest of his life. They tried to take him off the ballot. They tried to take off his head by underfunding his Secret Service protection. And what have Republicans done? Very little, because they are weak and feckless. I commend Elise Stefanik. She's one of you, along with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's actually been fighting back against this Democrat lawfare and election interference for many, many, many months. But it seems like it's the men in the House of Representatives representatives who maybe need some help finding their fortitude.
I think that's exactly right. I want to ask you about the ballot issue as far as RFK. I was at an event with him last night, and he joked about how for the life of his primary, the Democrats were suing to keep him off the ballot, and now they're suing to keep him on the ballot. However, Democrats failed. We just found out in Michigan and North Carolina, he will be taken off of the ballot. How much does that affect the election?
Well, I mean, nothing screams democracy like trying to throw the leading presidential candidate, Donald Trump, off the ballot because you fear you can't beat him on November 5th. Nothing screams democracy like ignoring 14 million Democrat primary voters and gutting Joe Biden in a bloodless coup. Nothing screams democracy like trying to rig these swing state elections by keeping RFK Jr. on the ballot when he's dropped off and endorsed Trump. It sounds like the people who pretend like they're protecting democracy are the ones destroying it.
Yeah. Mike, on Wednesday, I had Michael Chamberlain on the show. He's the director of Protect the Public's Trust, and he called something to my attention about how the Biden and the Harris administration are attempting to effectively Trump-proof the DOJ. Shoving a bunch of positions in there, people who have absolutely no merit, skill, or experience, and just people who are judicial activists to staff up that entire agency should President Trump win. I would proffer the notion that it's been Trump-proof for a very long time, or at least Trump-resistant for a very long time. But how concerning is that to you if Donald Trump wins? I mean, I don't know if it's a Schedule F situation where you just slash the whole agency. What does that look like?
I would say this. I think President Trump admitted recently that his mistake from his first term was on personnel. It's the first time he had won any office. It's the first time he had ever served in government. And he was badly served by many people he appointed. He's not going to make that mistake again. He's going to put great people in these key jobs, like the Attorney General, like the White House counsel. And they're going to come in there with a plan on day one to clean house with this deep state, this politicized and weaponized Justice Department, broader law enforcement, intel agencies. I would say to these people who have been running this illegal criminal conspiracy against President Trump, his top aides like Steve Bannon, who's in prison right now, Peter Navarro, who went to prison, his lawyers like John Eastman, Jeff Clark, Rudy Giuliani, his supporters on January 6th, who the Supreme Court said the Biden-Kamala regime persecuted in the Fisher decision. I would say to these people, lawyer up, because justice is coming.
Yeah. Mike, I want to ask you, I know you stay in pretty regular contact and communication with Steve Bannon, and obviously he is a friend of mine. He's a colleague at this network. I know that there were a number of underground efforts for early release. Can you update us on that?
I think that that's going to be a very steep uphill climb. But I would say this, Steve Bannon doesn't want us laying around crying about Steve Bannon being in jail. He doesn't want any missives, he says. He doesn't want notes. He wants us putting our efforts into registering voters and voting Trump supporters as early as possible so we can win this election decisively and save our country.
Amen. Amen. Hear, hear. Okay, I want to circle back to the beginning of our conversation with respect to President Trump. Lay out the two scenarios for me with respect to what you think the resulting sentence will be. If President Trump wins, does it all just basically go away? I know this is a state case, so he can't pardon himself, but what does it look like if Donald Trump wins? And if Kamala Harris is declared the winner, what does it look like in that scenario as well?
Well, the Supreme Court of the United States will eventually step in and stop all this because these are all bogus cases. It's what I've been saying for 2 years, more than 2 years, more than 4,000 media hits, constant social media, constant earned media, going on your show, constantly talking about this. The Supreme Court is very much onto their game. The Biden-Kamala lawfare and election interference game, that's very clear with the 6-3 Fisher decision and the 6-3 presidential immunity decision. There's no question this is all going to end badly for the Democrats at the Supreme Court. The issue is how much damage did they cause to our country before then? I think if they try to sentence Trump in New York, the Supreme Court will step in very fast and stay the execution of the judgment pending appeal, and Trump will win the appeal. But that's what they want. The Democrats want Trump to go to Rikers Island instead of back to the White House.
Yeah. I think that is essentially what we are up against, and that's what Americans should be thinking heading into this election. Mike Davis, founder of Article 3 Project, thank you so much for being here. Have a fabulous rest of your Friday.
Thank you, you too.
And again, can you imagine if it was the other way around with Donald Trump? All right, Mike Davis, the founder of Article 3 Project, thank you as always for being here. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back on the other side.